So to begin, in 1889, Dräger, for those of you who don't know, started in 1889 with the first patent, which was a pressure reducing valve for beer tap systems. And from there, anesthesiologists took that pressure reducer and started smoothly dosing patients with an anesthetic agent. And also we started building breathing apparatus for mines rescue and firefighters. So when they needed to go rescue their buddies or their neighbors, they had air to go in with them. So from the very beginning, we started on a medical path and a safety path. So when we talk about respiratory protection, Dräger has 130 years of working with respiratory systems on a medical side and on a safety side in some of the most challenging environments imaginable. So when it comes to providing APR, understanding the respiratory system, understanding filtration, understanding how to build things that are effective, safe, and easy to use, we've got a pretty long history. This is the Dräger family. This is the 6th generation of Dräger managers of the company. It's a family-owned company that when the pandemic started, we immediately started getting to work. One of the things that we did during the pandemic was build a US manufacturing facility. And that effort started a few days after we knew the pandemic was going to be a big thing. We purchased all the raw goods and then started purchasing the machines to make the masks, additional machines to make the masks. And one of the sites is in Montgomeryville, Pennsylvania. We built another one in France, one in England. We already had one in Sweden and already had one in South Africa. So we filled those out. We got our emergency use authorization from NIOSH in about 6 days. And we built the factory in 5 weeks. So from the day we got our permit to the day we had N95s coming off the line was about a 5-week period. And this is the factory that we built in Montgomeryville. So we're very proud of that investment. We're very proud of the effort, and it's been paying off quite a bit in terms of being able to provide respiratory protection to our neighbors, to nurses, to first responders. And there's a short video, it's on YouTube. Sometimes with bandwidth, it gets a little bit weird with sharing video. So I'll give you a moment. If you want to pull up your phone, it's a good little video that shows the growth of that factory, the work that went into it, the mentality that Dräger had in building it, and doing something good for our community, doing something good for our neighbors, because like I said, it's a 5th generation owned company. And one of the things that's kind of instilled in employees, in partners, is that we have a duty to do certain things, whether it's a duty to quality, duty to engineering, duty to excellence. And sometimes, in this case, it was a duty to do everything we could to build respiratory protection and ventilators for the pandemic. And so all the stops were pulled. And it's a good video that kind of highlights the achievement in building that. And we'll send out the link as well, and Frank, I think, is going to put it in the chat. So on to different respiratory protection levels. We have a multitude of breathing apparatus that are available out there. Everything from what we would wear walking around the grocery store, like a cotton mask or a 3-ply surgical mask, and then what you would see being sold as protection, a generic KN95, which is a different standard over in Asia. And where Dräger comes into play is the NIOSH approved breathing apparatus, the NIOSH approved SCBAs, the NIOSH approved half mask, full face filters, and particulate respirators. So everything we do carries an approval to it. Everything we do is tested to a standard, not only the Dräger standard, or not only the regional standard, but a Dräger standard beyond that. And those cotton 3-ply and generic masks are not things you would find Dräger offering. So next step, we want to talk about APR. What is APR? It's air purifying respirators. And what that means is it can encompass filtering piece respirators, half and full face masks, filters, and powered air purifying respirators, or PAPRs. All of them are dependent on ambient air. And you may see in the Dräger portfolio SCBAs, or self-contained breathing apparatus, in which you bring your air with you into the hazardous environment. The thing about APR products though is there's a limitation, or not a limitation, but there's a focus that you would have where you would be filtering the ambient air. And so you need to make sure that of a few things as you go through the use and employment or deployment of APR. You need to make sure that your oxygen levels are appropriate for use of APR. And then the type and concentration of the contaminant has to be known. These are designed to be used in an environment in which the hazard is known. You should not use them in poorly ventilated areas or areas in which the oxygen can drop because you're using it. And you would want to make sure that you've done the work to ensure that the hazard is quantified and that the respirator you're using matches the hazard that you're experiencing. And a lot of that information is usable or accessible on NIOSH's website. They've got an incredible amount of information that helps define the protection factor that you would need for the hazard that you're experiencing. The NIOSH handbook is what you would want to Google. There's also an app, and the website has a lot of really good information on how to define the hazard in your work environment. So when it comes to APR and the types of filters, there's a particulate filter that filters out particulates, and then there's a gas cartridge that filters out the gases that you would experience. And then there's a combination. So you should not mix and match or think that your gas cartridge is going to filter out particulates. There's a certain mesh of melt-blown material that would filter out an airborne particulate, and then there's an activated carbon that would filter out a gas. And then the carbon would be targeted to the gas that you want to filter out. So you wouldn't want to just assume that the filter you're using for gas would cover that gas. You would want to define the gas and the concentration, and then find the filter targeted towards that gas. And the nice thing about some of these gas cartridges are, if you open it up and the hazard isn't always present, it's just a potential hazard in your work environment, you can quantify the length of use for that gas cartridge and then layer on particulate filtration on top of that, because typically those gas cartridges are a little bit more expensive than the filtration. So you can take the gas cartridge and then layer on your particulate filtration over top of it, replace your particulate filtration, and until you've reached the threshold that you need to replace the gas cartridge, you can keep reusing the gas cartridge. So Dräger has a few different options for those that would be able to layer that protection to match your workplace hazards and requirements. And when we go through these, you'll see 3 different connections that Dräger has for our gas and particulate filters. One would be a Dräger bayonet filter that you would see on our twin filter systems. The other is an RD40, kind of a NATO standard 40 millimeter threading that spins onto typically the front of the mask. And then sometimes an RD90, which is a wider filter cartridge. And instead of a specific filter, specific threading on a neck, the entire filter has an RD90 filter threading around it. So those are the 3 different connection methods for the filter to go onto the mask, but then those filters can do different things, particulate filtration or different gases they can protect against. And then when we get into the relative size of particles, and we'll go over this a little bit more in a minute, but you'll see a few different numbers on an APR for a rating. You'll see a letter and then a number. Typically, everyone's familiar with an N95. But what does that mean? The 95 carries a specific meaning to it, meaning that this 0.3 micron, as you see here, the beige or the tan colored triangle there, the 0.3 micron particulate and larger, and an N95 or a mask with that 95 rating filters out 95% of those 0.3 micron particulates. And it encompasses a lot of different things, everything from pollen to smoke and dust and quite a few small particulates. When we get into a P100 or something with a 100 rating, that gets into very high filtration efficiency, where you would be filtering out 99.97% of those 0.3 micron particulates. That's important to know that when you're looking at a filter, you'll see a letter and a number. That number means the particulate efficiency. So once you've got that number and you've understood the hazard, you can take the protection that offers and put it into your calculation for whether it's appropriate for that hazard. And that's, again, available on the NIOSH website. Now we'll get into the letter markings. N, R, and P are the 3 different letters you would find in front of a filtering face piece respirator or half face respirator. So N is not resistant to oil. R would be resistant to oil and has limited lifespan in an oil and oil-based liquid particulate environment. And then oil proof P would mean that it protects against solid and liquid particles for a longer duration. So you'd be able to reuse that filter. Again, there's a NIOSH calculator that would be specific to your workplace, but that P100 canister or that P100 filter would provide that longer term usage in an oil-rich environment. And a lot of times you'll see a P100 canister, not necessarily an R or N100 canister. You'll be able to mix and match the requirements for the classification and the filtration efficiency. So that's the letter numeral explainer for what you would see for APR filtration. And again, what we'll see on these different classes is that particulate efficiency, 95, 99, and 99.97% efficiency. And on PAPRs, it's slightly different. You would see HE that would be comparable to a P100 filter, so high efficiency or HEPA filter. And on a PAPR, you would take that HE, and on a Dräger PAPR, the case cap you see there would cover up the filter, and you'd be able to layer on gas protection as well. But then PAPRs, they start at that HE level, which would be comparable to a P100. So if you see a PAPR filter that says HE, and you're looking for it to say N95 or P100, it's going to say HE, and that's per the NIOSH guidelines for how we approve these things. Same on the previous slide. The NIOSH guidelines for how we approve these products is aligned with NIOSH requirements for filtration efficiency, and then the names that we use for the different filters. So now we get into the X-plore 1700. And Frank, I can't see the chat because I'm using my little screen here. So if you could, if there's some chat that you want to jump in and let me know if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them as I go. So if I could rely on you or Ryan to jump in on me and stop me.
Sure, will do.
Thank you. So here we have the 1700. The N95 that's made in America. The version you see here has an exhalation filter. And for COVID, for source control of the virus, typically we see a lot of masks that don't rely on the filter for exhalation efficiency. There's a few different features that go along with this product that normally you would think of an N95 as a commodity. Dräger doesn't typically do commodities. We try and make things a little bit or a lot better. And when it comes to an N95 mask, we've done a few things that have really set us apart. The filtration efficiency of that mask is higher than the standard. So we recently, in 2019, 2018, we redid the filtration materials. And through the pandemic, we were looking for different sources of supply that were US based that allowed us to maintain a very, very high level of filtration efficacy while being available, which was a major concern, but also that was easy to breathe through, because now it's a little bit easier to explain inhalation, exhalation resistance. We've all been wearing masks for a year and a half. you can have a great filtration efficiency, but not be able to really breathe through the mask. So we have to find that balance. And Dräger has struck an incredible balance on our N95 line with the 17 and 1900. The one you see here has a very thin inner and outer layer, and then a melt blown layer that has that high filtration efficiency. And then matched with the inner and outer layer, there is a hydrophobic barrier that sloughs off rain, sweat, exhaled water vapor, so that it doesn't sit in the melt blown material and feel like a wet sock on your face. So when you wear this mask, it breathes easier. It's easier to breathe through. The inhalation exhalation resistance is quite low. And then the real test comes, everyone at Dräger is probably tired of hearing the story, but the real test comes in an environment like when I used to work in a foundry to pay for college, and it was like 130 degrees. And about 8 minutes after I stepped out onto the floor, everything was covered in sweat, and so was my mask, and it felt like a wet sock to breathe through. And so you're constantly adjusting it, trying to get it to sit right. You're constantly adjusting it, trying to be able to breathe a little bit better. And that breaks the seal of the mask. So my protection factor, my protection level has been compromised, not by the mask or its performance, but by me messing with the mask. And the breathability of this mask, respirator, is incredibly easy. And when it gets wet, it remains incredibly easy to breathe through. And so those are the two things that really set this mask apart in terms of performance. We could put it on a particulate counter and show the particulate count. We could put it on a simulated inhalation exhalation cycle and show the ease of breathing. It really does stand apart. And then the fit around the nose, there's a nose pad and a wire. So for me, I normally wear glasses, or if you're wearing safety glasses, fogging is always an issue. And you really want to make sure you get a good fit on the mask. So we've done a few things to help with that. One is that nose pad and the clip. And then the other is the single strap that goes around the back of your head and the back of your neck. But there's one place through which it loops through the mask, meaning you can tighten or loosen the head or the neck strap independently to make sure you're getting optimal fit, so that the tabs on the side that hold the strap give a firm, even pressure across the entire fit of the mask. So if you are having any fogging because of your exhaled breath escaping through the top of the mask, you pinch that down and you tighten up the top of the mask, and it creates a good seal. So now you're breathing in and out of the filtration material rather than through a gap that's created when your mask goes into a slightly positive pressure and that air is looking to escape. So this product, everything on it has been thought through and engineered to work in the environments that you're working in. And as a full line of products, right now we've mainly focused on the 1750, which is a N95 respirator with no exhalation valve. But pre-pandemic and eventually once things get more back to normal, we will have a full line of 1700s that have inhalation exhalation valves, odor resistance, and a few other smaller features that would R95s versus N95s that create the full line of products. Now we'll go on to the 2100. So the 2100 is an elastomeric half-face respirator. It's designed for those trades that you're going to wear respiratory protection all day, every day as a matter of course. It's extremely comfortable, and the cap on the front of the respirator gives you the ability to just put the filtration material right into the front of the mask. And that filtration material is just the straight filtration material sandwiched between the comfort layer and the outer protective layer that gives you a large amount of surface area, so you have a low inhalation resistance. And on the bottom of that, you have an exhalation valve. So as you exhale, that exhalation valve opens and you have a low exhalation resistance. So it's designed to increase your comfort both in how it fits on your face. The silicone seal provides a better seal. And then on the back of the head, you've got that crown that gives an even pressure across the back of your head, so we're not tugging on your ears or around the back of your neck, and it gives a firm, snug fit. These all have to be fit tested as a part of a workplace protection program. The N95s we're seeing are being deployed a little bit differently, but when you get into filtration, workplace protection for filtration of gases or particulates, not necessarily a pandemic, but normal course of business, you really want to make sure you're following good fit test practices, getting the right size, and making sure that these fit appropriately. The change out of the filtration material is easy to do. You just pop open a couple little tabs around the outside, replace the filtration material, and then you're back in business. So this could be issued out to an individual. They can reuse it. They can take the filtration material out at the end of the day and lay it on the side, and then sanitize the mask. And when they come back the next day or next shift, the mask is clean, sanitary, and ready to be put back together and used again. So it's a really nice way to provide that P100 level of particulate protection and a higher level of comfort. And the 2100 focuses exclusively on particulate protection. And we'll jump into the 33 and 3500, which provide both particulate and gas filtration capabilities. So on both of these, we have multiple sizes and a couple different materials for the face seal, EPDM or silicone. It's the same kind of head strap for comfort. It's a lower profile on the mask, and instead of a filtration, a raw filter material sandwiched between the two, we have twin filter systems that click onto the sides of the mask. So again, you define the hazard in the workplace. We put a P100 filter or a gas filter or both, combo filter, onto the sides of the mask, and that front grill area is your exhalation valve, and the oblong shape of the masks, of the filters, kind of pull backwards towards your jaw, down your jawbone. But the way those are designed is, again, we're maximizing the surface area through which air can filter itself through to your lungs. So as you inhale and draw a breath and you create a negative pressure inside that mask, air goes into the filters, into your respiratory area, and it's easier to breathe through. And the way that we achieve that low inhalation resistance is more surface area for that air to penetrate through. So as you're looking at the filters from Dräger, you may see that they're not round, they're more of an oblong shape. That's specifically to give you an easier time breathing through the mask. Because again, when you get into gases, vapors, and particulate filtration, stacking those filtration media on top of each other increases inhalation resistance. So we can stack them and spread them out and make it easier to breathe through, so that as you're using it, you can focus on your job, not the fatigue you're feeling or any discomfort from breathing in and out of a mask all day. So the particulate filters on here are a Dräger proprietary filter attachment system. It's just a quarter turn on and off to make sure they're seated. And once you get them seated on there, they're firmly seated. You have to, there's no way you're going to accidentally pull those off. You'll rotate them back out and pull them off. And I use the word proprietary. Then the thing about filters and masks are whether we use a universal pattern or not, the filter has to be approved with the mask for NIOSH's approval. So there's no interchanging using X filter and Y mask. You have to, when you choose the manufacturer, you choose the manufacturer for the mask and the filter. You can't switch filters between masks unless we get into an emergency situation on an RD40, like a 40 millimeter NATO threading. Then there's a specific rule set that you have from NIOSH that in an emergency, if you needed to use a spare filter from someone else, you could put it on there to escape. But for normal working, you would use the same mask manufacturer as you would the filter manufacturer. They'd be one and the same. Now we're getting into the X-plore 6000 series. The full face mask protection uses a couple different filtration attachments here, and the filters are larger. We also have a twin filter system, so the same filters that you would see on the 33 and 3500 would go on the 6000 mask as well. But you would also have the ability to put a 40 millimeter fitting on this mask, on the front of this mask. And the different colors coordinate with different types of materials that would be resistant to different types of hazards, say chlorine or even chemical warfare agents. There are specific materials that go into the manufacture of the mask to make sure that the mask is resistant to those hazards, not just the filter, so that the mask doesn't degrade over time with the exposure to those hazards. And on the higher level of protection that this offers is due to multiple levels of seal all the way around your face. So the way the Dräger face seal works is we have 2 levels of protection on the outside of the rim of the mask that operate independently. So right now I'm speaking, my jaw is moving. When we have those dual layers of protection, they flex and move independently. And if I breach one, we have the second one there to make sure we have a solid seal all the way around the face. The design for this mask is designed to be very wide field of view. And then the 40 millimeter threading, you just thread it on and thread it off. And then the polycarbonate lens on the mask offers ocular protection, both from impact hazards and the hazards you're seeing in the vapor or the particulate, as well as respiratory protection. And it's actually a higher protection factor due to the better seal of the mask. So one of the things that you would go through when you're evaluating each of these types of products, whether it's filtering face piece respirator, elastomeric half face respirator, full face respirator, or PAPR, is the protection factor or the assigned protection factor from NIOSH that's offered by that product. And that doesn't go just by Dräger, it goes by classification of product by manufacturer. So when you're doing your workplace hazard assessment, you would look at the hazard, you would look at the occupational limit that you're able to expose or be exposed to by NIOSH or OSHA, and then you would find a protection factor that gets you below that exposure limit, the permissible exposure limit. And each of these have a place because they each have different protection factors assigned to them. And one of the higher ones is the full face respirator. So that's part of the reason we would have this whole continuum of products, not just because we want to have, eye protection, but because each of these offers a different protection factor that would get you in higher hazard, you would bring you back below that permissible exposure limit. So on these, I'm wearing contacts right now, but typically I'm, 4-eyesing it. When I need to wear my prescription inside the mask, or if I'm going to be inside that mask inside a hazardous environment, I don't want to risk wearing contacts that might pop out or leave me somehow incapacitated visually. We have a prescription carrier that would come to you with the blanks that you would take to an optometrist. It has a tension device in there, so you'd be able to put it in the mask, click the prescription carrier in there, and now your mask has your prescription. And if for some reason you needed to get rid of the mask, leave it, or get a new mask or upgrade to a different mask, you'd be able to take that prescription carrier with you, put it in the new mask, and you're good to go. Or if someone, if your mask is being used by somebody else after being disinfected, and you were just being issued a mask from the pool, you'd be able to disinfect that mask, put your prescription right in it. There's no tools necessary for the installation of that. So everything on here has been thought through. Everything on these Dräger products has been thought through down to the molecular level of the rubber or the polycarbonate to make sure that that protection is offered no matter the hazard. And we have something for each hazard you would experience. So let's move on to PAPRs. So PAPRs have a somewhat unique respiratory protection category here. And powered air purifying respirator When used with a mask, they would need to be fit tested. A mask needs to be fit tested per NIOSH and OSHA. When you want to provide someone respiratory protection and either don't have the time or ability to get them fit tested, or they can't pass a fit test for whatever reason, whether it's they have facial hair for religious or just aesthetic reasons, you can put a hood on. So with a hood and a powered air purifying respirator, you'd be able to take a blower unit like what you see in front of you, filter matched to the hazard, a hose, and then you would wear the PAPR on your back, and the hose would attach to the back of a hood, and the hood would give the user a breathable space inside the hood, because now we've ramped up the airflow to create some level of positive pressure inside the hood, or a clean airspace inside the hood with filtered air. So you can be in the environment, in the hazard, and with that airflow moving through the hood, the air is being filtered by the PAPR. And some of the nice things about a PAPR are that there is no inhalation resistance. The PAPR does all of the work for you in pulling air through that filter and blowing it into the hood or the helmet. And we've got a few different attachments for hoods and helmets, whether they be welding or safety or hard hats, that would make that workplace specific. But if it's hot, if you're sweaty, you can use a PAPR and provide some level of airflow to you to provide some cooling, as well as a protected environment to breathe in. The really nice thing about the PAPR, this PAPR, is that there's a lot of safety features built into the PAPR itself. So if I'm just the worker, and somebody who's managing the safety portfolio comes up, that they can train me on the PAPR, make sure I know how to use it properly, but they know that there's going to be some level of forgetfulness on my part, or they want to know that that PAPR is being used appropriately, or they also want to know that old curious Sean here doesn't go messing with things and cause the PAPR to compromise my safety. So if you were to detach the hose, the PAPR would buzz, it would beep, and the lights would start flashing. So I would know that something happened to that PAPR. Also, on boot up, it does a self-check to make sure the airflow is good, all the connections have been made solidly, and that boot up sequence won't complete and the PAPR won't work if it's not put together properly. So upon first startup, the PAPR has to work properly, and through use, there's a continuous check to ensure that the PAPR is working properly, so the safety is actually being provided to the person using it. That's of paramount importance to everything that we do. And this PAPR ensures that there's a constant check to make sure that the PAPR is delivering the safety that is intended. It's pretty usable. You wear it on your back. It's got a power button, airflow increase, airflow decrease. As far as a user's concerned, the engagement with the PAPR is very simple. There's a replaceable rechargeable battery. There's a battery indicator on there, so you'll know immediately where the battery level is. And it's a very, very nice PAPR that's built to be robust. So you can see in the top left, there's a robust picture of it being smacked against something. But this PAPR has been designed to take the abuse of an industrial customer. So when you're out doing concrete, when you're out building a building, welding, smashing yourself between things to get to your weld, or get to the bolt that somebody put way back there, this PAPR, when it's smashed up against that wall, isn't going to crap out on you. It's not going to break. And the blower unit is designed for, instead of like an industry standard of about 5,000 hours, the blower unit's designed for 10,000 hours. So for the purchase of this PAPR, when you're using it, the PAPR is designed to last you in the environment in which you work, and it's designed to last you a long time. So the focus of this PAPR has been to be usable, safe, and robust to be used in the environment that you find yourself in. The components, like we talked about earlier, how do we use this PAPR? And it's up to you to decide what level of protection you need, whether it's a mask, a hood, or a helmet and visor combination. We've got a couple different hoses that either can be more of a throwaway hose or a premium hose that would have more flexibility and longer use life, depending on, again, your hazard, how often you use them, how often you'd be looking to change them out. And we also have standard and premium hoods, depending on whether you're intending this part to be single use in EMS or hospital setting, with the hood and hose being single use and the PAPR being a reusable, decontaminatable product, or whether it's a long-term use, whether you're in a paint booth and you would want to reuse that hood in the long term. We have both those options available. That's why we would have those two different levels. It's not any difference in the level of protection. It's just whether you're able or choosing to reuse the hood or not. And then when we get into visors and helmets, it's how do you need to employ this with a hard hat? And then do you need welding protection on the PAPR itself? And then on masks, if you're just using it in a particulate environment, you don't need a helmet and you don't want to use a mask, but you just want to make it easier to breathe through, that higher level P100 protection and easy to breathe through, we've got full face masks that make it very easy to use. Long term, easy for the user to breathe in and out. And it's up to you on how to choose which level of these you want to go with. So moving to the future, just for the 1300 and 1900 lines, we've been making these products. They're NIOSH approved. We've been making them for quite a while. Due to the pandemic, these were sourced or made overseas, mostly in Europe. Those are dedicated to local areas. So the 1700 is the American-made version. And very shortly we'll have the 1300, the 1200, and the 1900. So we're completing the lineup of what you would expect from a respiratory protection manufacturer. The full lineup of cup, trifold, bifold masks to use in specific settings, and valved, non-valved, and odor protection as well. So Dräger is a good full respiratory protection partner. When you're looking for respiratory protection for your workplace, we've got everything going from N95s all the way up to full CBRN or Chem Bio Radiological and Nuclear protected SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus, where you bring your air with you. And we're world leaders on rebreathers as well for mines rescue. Rebreathe the air you bring in using pure oxygen and scrubbing out your CO2 and everything in between. So when you have a workplace hazard, you need to filter it. Think of Dräger. Dräger has the products that you need, and we've got a program called Dräger Voice. So you put in your hazard, and it'll spit out the specific things we have designed for that. And you can always call me, call our customer service folks. They are all mostly up in Telford, Pennsylvania. So when you call somebody, they'll be on East Coast time and even later in the evening, so we can have conversations with you over in California. And they're an incredible group with tech support outreach, RSM, regional sales manager outreach, to get your questions answered, to make sure that the hazard you're experiencing in your workplace, we find the right solution for you.